Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Coinist Podcast. It's nice to have you here in this holiday week. Hopefully you're taking a little bit of time away from the charts. I know that the market has gotten sluggish as of late. Bitcoin's grinding up, right? It's up slightly off its 6,800 or 7K low towards the end of the month, last month. And so we are inching a little bit higher, but everything else is still pretty sluggish in the market. Still a lot to talk about with my guest today, who's Anthony Pompliano, better known as Pomp, co-founder and partner at Morgan Creek Digital. We talk where he's putting his money in 2020, what he thinks about this ETH and DeFi movement, whether ETH is money. We talk about a ton of trends, a ton of topics, and some stories and things to look out for. He even asked me a few questions. We have a little bit of fun. One thing that's important, if you're a Bitcoiner, if you're an Ethereum fan, whatever it is, don't get too triggered by anything we talk about. It is just our opinion, just having a little fun. It's always a pleasure to catch up with Pomp. He was actually the first episode on the show. So when I got the chance, I was in New York for a meeting, and I said, Pomp, we might as well sit down, catch up, see where you are putting that money, and ask some questions that have been on my mind. We're going to get right into the action. Before we do that, though, I do want to remind you, if you're a new listener here, be sure to hit that subscribe button on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube, wherever that might be. We're going to be talking to the key investors, best analysts, biggest exchanges every single week. I'm asking the questions on those trends, those narratives, those topics, so that you get the answers right here. Hopefully providing you one of the best shows in crypto. If you're a returning listener, thanks for stopping by again. It's always nice to have you, and really excited about some of the shows coming up in 2020, right around the corner. So before we get into today's episode, I have a quick message from my sponsor who makes this show possible to produce, to put out, all those things. I work with companies that I trust, that I use. Hopefully they benefit you as a trader or investor as well. And that sponsor is eToro.com, the worldwide leader in social trading, the best place for U.S. investors to buy and sell crypto. The most exciting feature about this platform is the copy trader feature. Create an account on eToro.com, or if you want to use the link right below this video, that's eToro.com/venturecoinist. If you're listening on YouTube, that link is right below the video. For everyone else on iTunes and Spotify, eToro.com/venturecoinist. Once you log into eToro, you're going to notice this crypto platform has more tools for you to manage your portfolio, view performance, and see what other traders are doing than anyone else in the industry. Now let's walk through that copy trader feature, which lets you scroll through the top Bitcoin, ETH, XRP traders in that platform, view their performance, and see one you like, and just click copy. You can choose how much of your money you want to copy, see how well they've done in the past, what they're doing right now, and you automatically copy your trades while you go on with your day. So if you're listening to the show, watching that football game on Sunday, if you're enjoying the holidays, you're at work, you can copy that top trader you selected, or if you want to trade for yourself, you can always do that too. You can even get paid when other traders copy you. So go to eToro.com/venturecoinist and start copy trading today. And guys, tweet at me when you find a trader that you do like to follow on that platform. I always like to hear how the traders and investors are enjoying using these different platforms. It gives me feedback, it gives them feedback, and hopefully improves the overall trading experience. So thank you, eToro, for sponsoring the show. Without further ado, let's get into this episode with Pomp. Enjoy the show, guys. Enjoy the holidays, and I will see you all soon. Peace, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time!
You are listening to the Coinist Podcast.
Pomp, we're live. This is the Off the Chain headquarters. This is where all the tweets come from. What's going on, man?
I don't tweet from this room. This is a no tweeting room.
Really? Is this one of those bat kits? This is like what John McAfee has. You can't tweet from that room. Faraday cage.
John McAfee is a nice gentleman. I wish him the best. Last time I saw John McAfee, he was drunk on his boat and was trying to get me to hold his guns, which I did not do.
Was that the strangest podcast episode you've ever done? Most dangerous, probably.
It wasn't dangerous because he was he wanted me to like hang out with him.
But he's running from. I mean, he still is on the run.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I don't know what qualifies as on the run and on vacation.
I guess you're right. for him, it's
like he was in the
mix.
Bahamas. I guess he was on the run.
It's a mix.
He
You're
was
just getting
hanging
back from Bulgaria. What was up there? You saw some sheep. What were
Yeah.
you doing out in Bulgaria, man? You had a Bitcoin meetup.
So my fiance is from Bulgaria. Most of her family still lives there, and her grandmother has a place in the mountains, one of the towns, and the neighbor has sheep, a horse, some turkeys, some chickens, a peacock. He's got a cow. He's got all kinds of stuff. And so he speaks no English. I speak very little Bulgarian. And whenever I've gone to Bulgaria, he always has some kind of offering for me. And so the first time I went, he killed one of his sheep, which was I was like, "You did what?" He was like, "Here it is."
What do you to eat?
Yeah,
Or
he
just
like killed it and then
as a
cooked
ritual?
it and
Okay.
then like brought it over in a wheelbarrow. And I was like, "All right, this is fucking dope." And then this time he made a bunch of homemade wine, which I appreciated. But he's just like a good dude, right? And he's just living his life, taking care of his animals, and he's worried about the airplanes. He can't believe that they're polluting his clean air.
Okay.
So he'll be all right. Ivan.
Did you give him any Bitcoin for the sheep or the wine?
No, but wild story. Polina's grandmother. We were sitting there and she said something Bitcoin to Polina's grandmother, and her grandmother lit up and goes, "Bitcoin?" And literally started to tell us all about Bitcoin. She knows all about it.
Wow.
And it's because she works in an accounting department for like a larger business in Bulgaria. And her bosses were buying Bitcoin. They mine Bitcoin, and everyone in her office in the accounting department knows about Bitcoin. And I was like, "That's why you're fucking playing this grandma."
There you go. There you go. Runs in the fam. What else? What have you been doing lately? Even when you're not in Bulgaria, I'm not seeing you on CNBC too much anymore with Joe Kern. I think you guys already spread the virus there. Are you purposely taking a break there? Are you working more behind the scenes? I know the podcast is obviously still running, the newsletter. You just raised a $50 million fund.
Yeah.
What takes up the most of your time now?
Just investing.
Yep.
Yeah. Do a lot of the podcasts, write every morning, tweet. It's a little harder to tweet when everyone's not as excited.
Yep.
CNBC stuff, CNN, all that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily intentionally pulling back. It's just like there's not too much to talk about, right? So I'm not going to go waste their time. They're not going to waste my time. But I'm sure we'll pick that stuff up. And then on the investing side, we've just been writing checks.
Yeah.
Hopefully that is a good time to write checks and when you're in the bear market. So we'll see.
I vividly remember one of the first times we talked, it was really kind of, I guess, the tail end of the ICO boom, but everyone was still very optimistic on what tokens were going to do. You could pretty much throw money at a dartboard and do well. And you were on the phone saying, really just trying to understand it. And I vividly remember you saying, well, whatever it does, I don't feel comfortable putting investor money in it. I just can't do it, but I do want to learn about it, right? So staying away from that obviously probably put you in a better spot. What are you thinking about now? What excites you past Bitcoin that you are putting money to work? I know it's more looking at profitable businesses past tokens, but what specific themes?
So before I answer that question, in 2018, I think end of Q1, I went to a conference in San Francisco on a battleship. It's a wild thing to say, but went on this conference, sat on stage in a fireside chat, and a guy asked me about ICOs.
Yep.
And I probably wasn't as self-aware as I should have been that I was in a room full of entrepreneurs that all ICO'd.
Yep.
But I basically was honest. And I said, I think that most of these people are breaking the law. They don't even realize it. It's going to end really badly, blah, 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 whatever. I literally got booed. Like while I was on stage. I got off the stage, and the next panel, before I could walk out of the room, somebody basically said something to the effect of, that guy's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, ICOs aren't breaking the law, blah, blah, whatever. So I remember this as when you think about like what's going to happen, there's like what the market believes, and then there's like what you believe, and you just got to be really comfortable believing what you believe, and even if it's non-consensus, like hopefully you're right? And I say that because I think there's things that I'm looking at that other people have either written off or they don't think are going to be super valuable, which tells me that we're probably onto something. So every stock, bond, currency, commodity is going to be digitized. I think that the problem was most of the OGs had heard that for so long that they'd like given up on it. It's like, oh, like there's no point to tokenized securities. As many people know, we've now made 4 investments in a company. It's now $1 billion business figure. They figured it out, right? They're digitizing debt very effectively and being super disruptive to a market. So I think that'll continue into stocks, currencies, commodities, etc. I think another thing is this idea that humans are going to continue to trust algorithms and software over other humans. So That plays out less about like DeFi as it's known today. I actually think that the DeFi versus Bitcoin space is a mismatch right now. So if you think about Bitcoin as money, but all of the infrastructure around it's centralized, but in the Ether world, Ether is probably not money, but all of the infrastructure is decentralized. Well, there's going to be a melding of those two worlds where Bitcoin is money and decentralized infrastructure is going to come together. I actually think, unfortunately, that the Ether community is going to have a rude awakening in that the DeFi space is going to end up being built, but it's going to be built over on the Bitcoin side, which I think is scary to some people because they're going to be blindsided by that. Another thing is with stablecoins and digital dollars, I think that legacy banks are going to create massive financial incentives to elicit people to adopt the digital dollars. In that world, you can see them saying, we'll pay you higher rates of interest on an interest-bearing account if you keep your cash in a digital dollar versus a traditional dollar.
Sure.
We'll give you higher rewards if you take your credit card rewards in digital dollars. We will drastically reduce the cross-border transaction fees or wire fees if you transact in digital dollars rather than wires or anything else. And then I think we're getting probably 18 months to 24 months away. There's going to be a showdown between the Wall Street banks and regulators. And I think regulators are going to wake up and realize, wait a minute, they're not building stable coins, they're building central banks. And that's going to get really, really messy.
But how will their approach be anything different to what they said to Libra, or will it, right? It'll pretty much be, look, calling it out, saying you are building your own currency, just stop. Are they going to play the same playbook?
You can't, as one country, outlaw something that is multinational in nature,
Sure.
right? So Libra has geographic diversity, it has industry diversity, it even has public and private sector diversity. So the U.S. can say, no, you can't do this, but Facebook is just one company in an association. So even if Facebook backs out, Libra can continue on,
Yep.
right? If all U.S. companies back out, Libra can continue on. So the decentralization of that is part of the security of it being able to persist. But if regulators say to JP Morgan, if you unpeg your digital dollar from the real dollar, it's illegal, right? You're going to jail type thing. They back out, there's no one left, right? So it's their fully centralized control of that corporate central bank, which I think a lot of people say, oh, JP Morgan's getting the game. This is going to be good for stable coins. But again, all they're going to do is they're just going to unpeg their digital dollars or their stable coin from that dollar peg behind it. And when they do that, now they're just a central bank. They can print as much of their JPM coin as they want, and they don't have to check with anybody else. There's no oversight. There's no rules. There's no anything.
What demand is there, though, for an unpegged JP Morgan coin? Like,
You're not going to adopt an unpegged one. You're going to adopt the pegged one.
Yeah, but that works for a quarter. So you adopt the pegged one. What happens when they unpeg? I mean,
it's the same thing that happened to the dollar. So here's what they do is, so they're going to create JPM coin. They move their own cash around the world. Super inexpensive, very fast, etc. It's great. Then they go to their corporate partners and say, hey, it's cheaper. I'm going to save you credit card fees. I'm going to save you all this money. Use the JPM coin.
Sure.
Corporate partners say great. Vendors say great. Then they go to retail and same thing. They say, hey, I'm going to incentivize you to adopt our digital token. So I'll give you higher rates of interest on the deposit accounts. I'll give you better rewards on the credit card. I'll give you lower rates on mortgages, yada, yada, whatever. If you if you take your salary in digital tokens, this digital dollar, right, we'll do whatever. Only once it has full adoption, then they unpeg it.
Yep.
People are dumb, man. They're already using it. They adopted it.
Bait and switch.
Yeah, it's what the U.S. did. Why would they not do it? They're financially incentivized to do it.
Well, I think they will try it. I just don't know. I think it leads to an end game. I think they're also smarter than to try the bait and switch that quick, right?
Oh, it's not going to. It's not going to.
The U.S. did that over how many years?
Yeah. So to be clear, I think that over the next 18 to 24 months, they'll do the financial incentives to elicit adoption. The unpegging, that doesn't happen.
That's
in 2
long term.
years. Yeah. But I think that it's important to get regulations in place today that say you are not allowed to do this. So like my whole thing, and I've been saying for a while now, is there should be regulation that if you launch a stable coin as pegged to any commodity or currency, it's illegal to unpeg it in the future.
Sure.
So if you want to launch a different one, knock yourself out. You can peg it to whatever you want. But if you come out with a promise that something's pegged to a currency or commodity, you can't change that in the future once there's adoption.
So basically, you have to be an honorable central bank if you're going to be one.
Yeah. Well, you're not a central bank then, right? If it's pegged to the U.S. dollar, then
you're still creating your own currency.
No, because it's backed 1-to-1. So the Fed's still the central bank. It still sets the monetary policy. All you're doing is creating a layer on top of
synthetic way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like creating like a credit layer on top, right?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
The problem is if it's unpegged, then literally Jamie Dimon can be like, print more. Like, no fucking way does anybody want to live in that world.
Yeah.
Because then, by the way, down the street at Wells Fargo, they're doing the same thing. Down the street, HSBC is doing the same thing.
Jamie
right?
Dimon wants to live in that world.
Of course, they all do. They all want to. How long have they tried to control or influence the central bank? But now they don't have to control or influence the quote-unquote independent central bank. They can just be one themselves. Fucking crazy world.
It is a crazy world. I want to go one step back, and this is going to make Twitter as crazy as that world sounds. What is ETH then if it's not money? Right? You talk about this decentralized infrastructure meeting Bitcoin as this decentralized money, and ETH might not be the money. And I was talking with Sue, and he was saying the reason that people aren't using these DEXs and a lot of this stuff is because really a lot of people use Bitcoin, and that's what they want to be trading. They don't want to be trading ETH versus these other random tokens. Bitcoin needs to be incorporated more into DeFi. Are you saying Bitcoin will be more incorporated into DeFi, or are you saying the actual infrastructure will be built on Bitcoin?
Both. So I think there's two ways people are going to try to solve this. You're going to see people trying to wrap Bitcoin in like the ERC20 tokens,
sure.
Ethereum,
it's already
et cetera.
happening a little bit.
Yeah, people are trying it already. I think that is a good experiment for people to try.
Sure.
But I think that the longer term sustainable way is to build the DeFi infrastructure on and around Bitcoin. At the end of the day, ETH is not sound money, right? It doesn't have the monetary properties of sound money. And I think that there's a lot of people who they believe that because ETH is being used in these DeFi applications today, that makes it money. But at the end of the day, that's like saying Amazon gift cards is money, right? Oh, because somebody is using Amazon gift cards to buy something, that doesn't mean that Amazon gift cards are money. What it means is that Amazon's system requires you to take money, convert it into what is a gift card, and then use it, right? And so, yes, is it being used as a quote-unquote medium of exchange? Sure, but at the end of the day, what's happening is it's priced in dollars. It's a dollar-denominated asset.
Sure.
What you're seeing in the Bitcoin world is you're actually seeing Bitcoin-denominated assets and values, and I think that will continue to become more and more popular. And so ETH is exactly what it's supposed to be. It's a utility token. Right, and that utility token is being used to give access to products or give access to the network. Bitcoin is something very, very different. And again, I know people get upset about it. Right? I'm not religious about this stuff. I told somebody today, my opinion doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Right. Like, guess what? Newsflash. It literally does not matter what I think. All I look at is what the market says. And so far, the market has determined that the most valuable cryptocurrency is Bitcoin. And it's not even close. And is there value associated to other things? Sure. But if you look at it from like a market confidence standpoint, ETH doesn't matter compared to Bitcoin, right? And neither does anything else. Now, over time, will that change? Of course, right? And maybe ETH does become much more dominant and important, but it's just the market is the ultimate decider or the ultimate referee. And so far, Bitcoin has dominated that market.
Let's talk about Bitcoin now.
You're going to go viral for that.
Yeah, I was going to say the
You're
ETH heads are they're already sharing that. They're planning their threads right now. Rest in peace, your mentions, man.
But wait, can I say one thing though? Just so everyone knows, I think that Ethereum ecosystem is super important because one of my core beliefs is that the experimentation and innovation is essential. Like the development of DeFi on Bitcoin would be way behind where it will end up if we didn't have Ethereum and the DeFi experimentation, right? Like, think about how much has been learned there and experimented there. If that stuff didn't happen, the whole industry would be behind. So it's understanding, like, what's the value being created, but also understanding, like, what's the most sustainable, scalable thing moving forward. You have to start with the most kind of concrete base unit of account.
All right, quick break in the action before we get back to the show. I have a message from my amazing sponsor, Bybit, who I've been working with for quite some time, since the beginning of the show, really helping make this show possible every single week. Please do go check them out if you're a trader. one of the best places to trade Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, EOS, both directions with leverage and with no overload. Overload is a problem that a lot of traders have faced over the last few years, and that has not been another platform that has good enough liquidity or has good enough volume for traders to be able to trade Bitcoin versus the dollar with leverage, hedge, all those different things. You can do that on Bybit.com with no overload. So if you are an active trader, if you do like trading XRP, if you do like hedging those alt positions, or if you do like trading Bitcoin, I really think you'll enjoy checking out Bybit.com. You can also go to trading.bybit.com/venturecoinist and get a little deposit bonus just for using my link. It's right below the video if you watch here on YouTube. For everyone else listening on iTunes or Spotify, just go to Bybit.com. Thank you, Bybit, for sponsoring the show. And without further ado, let's jump right back into things. Enjoy the rest of the episode, guys. Let's talk about Bitcoin. One piece that I've been thinking about all week is Jill Carlson's blog. Did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Bitcoin is not ready for the mainstream, or it's not made for the mainstream. I don't know what the headline was, but the article was very well written. And it's gotten some pushback, especially from the ETH community, talking about, well, no, it's not only used for the censored, and censored doesn't necessarily mean illegal. And illegal also doesn't necessarily mean bad. What are your thoughts, though? You speak with a lot of institutional investors and pitch it, giving it these kind of a narrative of a way that institutional investors can think about it, either being a store of value, either being a digital gold, right? And that's sometimes kind of maybe pitching it as something that it's maybe not, right? We talk a lot about mainstream adoption and institutions coming. What do you think about that thesis that it's not made for the mainstream and that doesn't matter?
I think that's wrong. And again, Jill is smarter than me, smarter than 99% of the people who are looking at this stuff. But the two core components that I think get forgotten are, one, I personally believe that every institutional investor that has looked at Bitcoin and doesn't put it in their portfolio is violating their fiduciary duty. Right? And I've been saying that for a long time. And the reason is their job is to find risk-adjusted returns, the best risk-adjusted returns. And if you believe modern portfolio theory, if you take this asset and you put it in your portfolio, you reduce the overall risk of your portfolio and you have a material impact on the upside of the portfolio. And so you can have all the qualitative arguments that you want. The quantitative argument is pure facts. And those facts refute the idea that they shouldn't put Bitcoin in their portfolio.
Sure, and I don't think those are mutually exclusive, though. So I think quantitatively, yes, I agree. And that makes a lot of sense. But I'm saying qualitatively, primarily, it's used for censorship resistance. Those are the transactions that matter. If it's not, use something else. Use Visa. Do you disagree with that?
No, because that's a use case right there that every institution in the world should put it in their portfolio because it's non-correlated.
Okay. So use case
that
as an investment.
But that is a use case.
Just as an investment vehicle.
That is one use case, right?
Yeah, sure.
So there we have every single major institution. Like, people forget there are 2 U.S. public pensions that have exposure to Bitcoin. Think about that. That position this year is up very big, right? And when you look at it, the data is so overwhelming. Over the last 5 years, if you had a 60-40 global portfolio, you returned about 7.2%. If you'd taken 0.5% from stocks, 0.5% from bonds, put it into Bitcoin, you would have gone from 7.2% to 9.2%. So 200 basis point upside. If that 1% position in Bitcoin had gone to zero, you lost all your money. It got from 7.2 to 7%, 20 basis point downside. So 10 to 1 upside to downside. And the fact that it's non-correlated, right, ends up reducing the overall risk of the portfolio. Like, people always focus on the qualitative. No one uses it, blah, 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 whatever. It's one of the top 15 most popular currencies in the world. On-chain transaction volume last year was more transaction volume than Venmo, PayPal, or Apple Pay. It's available in more countries, and people don't like to hear this in the U.S., but we're spoiled. The U.S. dollar works. But my favorite part to bring people up with is they say, oh, no one buys it with coffee. I just went and bought coffee. I didn't use dollars. I used credit. Most of the coffee that's bought at Starbucks is used with credit. It's not dollars. When do I settle that transaction? When I pay off my credit card at the end of the month, right? So people think, oh, I'm using dollars. No, you're not. You're using credit. And the reason you use the credit is because the dollars are actually harder to use than the credit, right? And if you think of it in layers, there's gold and there's paper claim on gold, and there's electronic money, then there's credit built, etc. Well, that took a lot of time to build. Same thing's going to happen with Bitcoin. And so I think that it's just the data is so overwhelming in terms of the usage, the adoption, etc., that a use case is censorship resistance. But if you are sitting in a country where you can't get a bank account. Bitcoin provides access. And so access is just as important as censorship resistance. And I think a lot of people don't understand how important these assets are, right? If you go and you ask somebody like a Catherine Coley, how'd she get into Bitcoin? It was because she was trying to send money from Hong Kong, right? Like, again, has nothing to do with censorship. It has to do with the legacy banking system sucks.
Well, partially. I mean, she was trying to get money out of there. That's a transaction that isn't necessarily illegal, but was kind of censored. Isn't it hard to get money out of Hong Kong?
Yeah, but that's not censorship, right? That's just that they make you jump through a bunch of hoops and it's expensive.
Yeah.
Right? Censorship.
Bypassing, yeah.
Censorship is I can't send money to Iran.
Based on
I want to send money to
on,
Iran, so I'm going to send it with Bitcoin.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
That's part of what I think people don't realize, right? Here in the U.S., right? There's a number of people that I've sent Bitcoin to over the last year, right? Why? It was Saturday or Sunday. Banks are closed, right? Like, it's pretty simple stuff. But again, to say that, to try to put an asset in a binary world if it's only for this one thing, I think is super short-sighted.
I don't think she was doing that, and I hope Jill didn't take it as that. But I think main use case is kind of what she was saying, and that she didn't want to live in a world where it was mainstream because primarily its censorable transactions are that's what it's used for. Right?
Wait, what? Why is she saying she doesn't want to live in that world?
Because that would be a pretty terrible world to live in. Imagine if things were that restrictive, right, and we had to rely on a digital cash that much. Right? If we were that under control, pretty much.
You already are.
Yeah, but
not
really.
No, you absolutely are.
Well, we're spoiled in the U.S., but most of the world, I think, is still in a pretty good
place. You live
place.
in a surveillance state.
Sure.
Right? Like Warren Davidson, congressman out of Ohio, right? I just interviewed him, and he basically was like, look, we basically have empowered the banks to spy on their customers. Every financial transaction you do, somebody's looking at.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, a lot of people are opting out. I think that the most bullish piece of data that I saw the entire year was the Charles Schwab report based on what millennials are investing in, and it showed that from 21 to 36-year-old, more of them are investing in the Bitcoin Trust than in Disney or in Netflix.
Of course. And
that's just the Bitcoin Trust. Imagine Bitcoin as well, which isn't even tracked in that. Right? That's a top 10 holding is Bitcoin across millennials.
You have to remember that they're not there for censorship resistance. People are learning what.
Yeah, they're there for the investment carry. Yeah.
Yeah, they're there because they're learning what money is, right? And I would argue that Bitcoin's larger value proposition, right? I've said this before. Bitcoin will do more to solve wealth inequality than all philanthropy combined. Why? Because the number one driver of wealth inequality is inflation. How do you fix inflation? You have to break the system. How do you break the system? You redesign it. Bitcoin does that. You can spend a bunch of money donating and doing all this stuff. You can't fix wealth inequality unless you fix the structure that steals the wealth from half the country, right? And so what has happened since QE, et cetera? Wealth inequality gap has absolutely exploded. And it's because inflation literally steals the wealth from those who keep their assets in cash. And so when you start to look at it that way, it's like, I would argue that, yes, Bitcoin's from a usage standpoint, sure, censorship resistance is one, is very important, right? So she's dead on in that sense. But just as a savings technology, it's going to have a bigger impact in preventing inflation from stealing people's wealth than anything else. So, like, how do you quantify this stuff? Again, like, that's where I go to. You can't make it black and white, right? And even from a privacy standpoint, like, you can actually use Bitcoin and not be private, or you can use it and be private. So how do you put it in a box? You can't. And so I think it's like there's so much like intellectual Olympics going on. And that's why, again, I go back like, who cares what my opinion is? The market has determined it's the most valuable one by like a landslide. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
I don't either. Bang, bang. Hot off the press. Pomp, someone else who gets that thesis that you just laid out is Ray Dalio. Congrats on the 2 mil downloads in the podcast, by the way. You're hunting down Ray Dalio and Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
Anyone else you want to have on the podcast for 2020? Or your thoughts on Ray?
He's a Bitcoiner. I don't think that
he's got to be.
I don't think that he owns any Bitcoin, but I
really?
think,
you don't think he owns?
No.
He owns no Bitcoin.
Yeah, I would bet that he owns none.
Why?
My guess is that if you ask him, he's going to say everything that a Bitcoiner would say, but the solution is gold. Like, you got to remember, it's a demographic thing, right? Like,
he was at Burning Man this year. You don't think a Bitcoiner got in his ear?
Oh, I'm sure that people talk to him about it. He just doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
Same with Mark, right? Like
Yeah.
Cuban. He just, again, he understands the argument. He just doesn't believe it.
I think Mark's different. I think Mark saw value in ICO tokens and doesn't quite understand Bitcoin. I think Ray's coming at it from a way different angle. He understands the problem and he sees a solution, but he doesn't think that solution is Bitcoin maybe just yet.
Yes.
I think Mark doesn't necessarily, well, he probably also sees the problem, but I don't think he sees Bitcoin as a solution. I think Ray probably understands that it could be, right? He just thinks an alternative is better.
Yeah, but it's look at their key advantages. I would rather have Ray making currency and macroeconomic decisions, and I'd rather have Mark making technology investments. Right?
Sure.
Obviously. And so I think that their skill set and expertise, like Ray is very well suited to understand the problem, which obviously he does. He's written quite extensively about it. And his experience lends him to believe that gold is the answer. And really, Bitcoin and gold are not very dissimilar, right? They're actually pretty similar. The difference is just one's mispriced and one's not, right? So, look, he will probably come around at some point, but we'll see.
Look, I got a whole series coming out about that soon, Store Value series. Keep your eye out for that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one. Pomp, that's really all I have. I don't want to take up too much of your time. You got to run. Thanks for having me to New York, man. This is good. What should the people be looking out for? Any bombs you want to drop right now? I know you got something. You're always working on something behind the scenes.
No, nothing.
Nothing? You're keeping it under wraps for now?
I'm trying to think. I don't have anything. Joe, what do we got? Anything?
You got the new YouTube channel. Check out the new, Off the Chain YouTube?
Yeah. Off the Chain. Just search Off the Chain. Please go subscribe. There's nobody's subscribing. Please go subscribe.
Off the Chain, still spreading the virus. Look at that.
No. Let me ask you a question.
What's up?
I want to ask you two questions.
Go for it.
If you could interview anybody in the world, who would it be?
Man, not crypto focused, right? Anything
Anything
in the world. I don't know. I've heard you ask that question before and thought about the answer, and now I don't have the answer in my head.
Anybody in the world.
Anybody in the world. I'd probably interview, I would say my dog. My dog can't talk. If my dog could talk.
That's a really good answer, actually.
Yeah. I'd want to know.
That's a fantastic answer.
If there has been a single thought throughout their entire lifetime, or if it's just happy, sad.
Oh, they definitely
that's
like
it.
These dumb two-legged animals.
You think there's thoughts like that in what,
course.
laying out logic like that?
You ever try to like get your dog to come over and like do something?
it's a smart dog,
your
yeah.
just turns around and walks away, right? And you're just like, damn.
Yeah.
Like I can't even get my dog to listen.
Yeah.
All right, so that's one. Two is ETH money.
I'm not going to answer. This is my show. This is my show. What are you doing?
For those that are at home, that probably means he agrees with me, but he just won't say it.
Look, I think regardless of whether or not it's money, it's not real. Once again, my opinion definitely doesn't matter. What I find more interesting is what the biggest thing that's holding it back is no clear monetary policy still. And that's just why I have more conviction in Bitcoin. I understand it. You can see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with ETH, there's just still a lot up in the air. I think a lot of it's interesting.
And by the way, it's almost like they shouldn't try to be something that they're not well suited to be.
Well,
Stop trying to be a cat if you're a dog.
I don't think this is necessarily towards ETH. I think this is for a lot of projects. If you're trying to compete as money, you're just going to lose to Bitcoin. But if you're competing as something else, as an infrastructure or as a utility for this infrastructure or as digitizing something else, right, which potentially could, that use case can stick. Who knows if it does or not? I know it hasn't yet, but it can. I think you have a much better shot. Yeah. And being antagonistic towards Bitcoin, that's what me and Sue were talking about, I just don't think wins long term.
Yeah, and it's also a thing where one of the big competitions moving forward is going to be, does Bitcoin come to the DeFi infrastructure in the Ethereum world, or does DeFi come to the Bitcoin world, right? And
how will it come to the Bitcoin world, though? I think that's why Vitalik, right, went to ETH.
Oh, I know a couple companies working on it. We'll see.
Yeah. ETH just has a head start there. So I think Bitcoin logically has to go to the Ethereum system first. And then I think it's maybe a matter of time.
But I think that's
right?
That's a perfect example of what the
playground.
Ethereum community should be focused on.
Sure, a sandbox.
Go and get the sound money and bring it into your ecosystem, because that's going to give you a significant advantage. Because if the DeFi infrastructure gets built around Bitcoin, that's a crazy world for the Ethereum community. I don't know what they do then. By the way, to be very clear, I believe that everyone should be experimenting and innovating, and there's too much of this like these guys are good, these guys are bad. These are this is basically me saying to like the ETH community, like go be the best at what you're good at, right? And I don't think that's making ETH money. Like I think it's a bunch of other stuff.
Have you seen that Pomp ETH on Twitter? It's basically you, but the Ethereum version.
Yeah. I actually blocked him at first, and like 20 minutes later, I was like, you know what? Like, good for them. Whatever, that's fine.
It's hilarious.
Well, I mean, like, if you need to take the Bitcoin narrative and make it for ETH to feel good about yourself, go ahead.
It's a meme. It's funny.
By the way, I love everyone who works on this. Actually, some of my very good friends are some of the people building some of the most important ETH stuff. It is. I think it's funny to joke about, but at the same time, like we're all on the same team.
Yep.
So,
Pomp, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.